Uh, it is basically overall analysis of what is the political situation right now and how it is developing in UK or Great Britain. Now, we will be joined by Apurva Sahasrabuddhe, as we have already introduced previously. He is sub-editor at NewsJunka, and NewsJunka is a news portal, which basically covers news both in Marathi and Hindi. It is, and they have got some really great content. So if you would guys are interested, you should definitely check out their content. And hi. So today's session, as I have already started describing it, it is principally the politics after Brexit, and that too we are covering UK at the moment. And today, my role will be more of a person who will be witnessing entire thing, and I will be asking some questions and getting some insights from Apurva, because as I personally know that he is quite fond of tracking not only US but also UK elections and what are the political dynamics of that. So my first question, that what is that one thing in UK politics which you consider as the tectonic shift? Is there any, and if it is any, then what would it be in your opinion?
Yeah. So, first of all, the what we have to understand about UK politics, when we say UK politics, huge chunk of it is basically English politics. England. England is the biggest, by far the biggest country, then Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland. So, if you get most seats in England, you don't need seats from Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And that is what the Tories, that is the Conservative Party, has been doing for last some years, some elections since say 2010. 2010 was the election they got in power. What happened was in 2010, David Cameron did not have his own majority. That is, the Conservatives did not have majority, and that was at the back of 13 years of Labour government. So since 1997 to 2010, 13 years, Labour were in power and Tories were in the opposition. Tories is basically what they refer to as Conservative Party. There is a
Right.
history of why that is so, but let's not get into that. Uh, so, what you asked about, what is the one single thing which is the highlight of past several years? I would say that, as our topic suggests, after Brexit. So after Brexit, what is the one fundamental thing that has happened is the Northern England, which is the area which borders Scotland, and which is referred to as, or it is understood to be, the most impoverished part of England. Okay, let's be very specific. Most impoverished part of England. That area used to vote almost in bloc for the Labour Party for many decades, many decades. In 2019 election, which was the first winter election after 30s or something like that, 1930s that is, when Boris Johnson first got his majority. He was
Right.
elected as the prime minister in 2019 June or something, but that wasn't his election. He got elected because Theresa May resigned. But in 2019 election, that election, he was the one. I mean, he was the face of Conservative Party, and he was on the ticket too. So, if you want to put it like that, and he won many seats in that Northern England area. It is referred to as, that's the red wall. If you look at it, this is the England, then Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Okay, so it is referred to as Labour Red Wall, which is in the Northern England. So Conservatives don't do that good, actually not at all good in Scotland, and they don't do that good in Northern England. Okay, so basically, all the conservative seats used to be from Eastern England, Western England, Southwestern England, and Central England. Okay, I mean, obviously there were exceptions, but the chunk of seat used to be from this area. Now, why this happened, why Boris Johnson actually bridged that red wall. The reason is that the reason is Brexit. The reason is Brexit because most people from that region actually voted to leave, and Labour Party's stand was to remain in the EU. Okay, the person who was the face and who was sort of leading the Leave campaign in Brexit election referendum was Boris Johnson. So naturally, people who were saying that we want to leave, the only leader they had who was actually saying that we will leave. Actually, the slogan, Boris Johnson's slogan was "Let's get Brexit done." So that was a very clear story. It was like "Achhe din aane wale." So people bought into it and people voted for it. You know, just like I'm not trying to draw parallels here, but just to give you an idea that let's say in 20 actually let's say in 2019 when for the first time BJP got 18 seats from West Bengal, you know, that was a major shock. Similarly, Tories getting Tories getting substantial number of seats from Northern England was a major shock for the British polity, let's to say. So that I would say is the biggest concern and biggest change in the UK elections since Brexit, and that is the highlight of UK elections.
Right. So, in addition to that, what would you say about leadership of Boris Johnson? Because certainly he is quite not a character who would fit into the leadership which UK has been providing, to the world and to world at large. So, how would you describe his leadership and how it is affecting if there is any change in Britain?
Well, 2 or 3 days ago, there were many elections in UK actually. Mayoral elections. There was one Hartlepool by-election. So Hartlepool is a constituency again in Northern England, which has voted for Labour for more than 60 years. More than 60 years. And 2 to 3 days ago, Conservatives actually won on that seat. And you have to understand that this is after 11 years of Conservatives being in power. That's a huge gain for them, actually. Uh, about Boris Johnson, there's this historian Neil Ferguson who said that everything about Boris Johnson, everything about Brexit, not Boris Johnson, was to make Boris Johnson prime minister. Everything else was a collateral damage for him. So whatever happens after Brexit, he doesn't care about it. The goal was to get David Cameron out and get Boris Johnson in. That was the only goal of Brexit. That's his interpretation, not mine. If you ask me personally, I would say that Boris Johnson has somehow he's like Modi in a way. He hasn't actually shown any um, economic or any sort of growth which you would consider growth or a progress. You know, in Modi's case, you can say infrastructure and all, but the economy has been tanking. Still, people are voting for him. It's the same with Boris Johnson, that even though he's not doing that good, but people are still voting for him. The Conservative Party is actually a right-wing party. I mean, economically right-wing party. We don't really have that in India. So, but even there, the conservative voters are actually voting for Boris Johnson and Tories, even though this conservative government under Rishi Sunak as finance minister, who has spent more than any other British government in history. So there is no fiscal discipline or anything. I mean, in the name of uh, COVID-19, they have spent all this money, and people are still voting for him. And it is not coming from the rich, white, middle class, upper middle class, and rich people of southern, central, and east western England. It's now coming from the northern England, which is supposed to be the impoverished part of England. So that's a major shift. Just like again, I don't mean to draw parallels here, but it's the new right wing, which is economically left and getting support from the people who are impoverished, who are from the marginalized societies. Like we discussed West Bengal. West Bengal BJP got most of its vote from SC community. That, those are just facts. In even in 2019 and 2014, BJP got so many seats because BJP actually got more OBC SC votes than it got more upper caste votes, so-called upper caste votes, because that's the demographic fact that's there. So without those votes, BJP could not have won. So BJP are getting those votes, even though it's if you wish to call it vote bank, it's supposed to be the upper caste. Similarly, conservatives are getting uh, well-defined and traditional labor voters for since 2019, I would say, even though they are supposed to be the party of rich aristocratic white people. And you can see that Preeti Patel is Home Secretary, Rishi Sunak is the Finance Minister. Things are changing. Rishi Sunak is supposed to be. I mean, people are talking about it that he is supposed to be the next Prime Minister.
Who?
Rishi Sunak, who is Infosys chairman. I'm forgetting his name.
Narayan
Modi.
Modi.
Narayan Modi.
Yeah,
Yeah. So Rishi Sunak is Narayan Modi's son-in-law.
son-in-law.
He's
Right.
a finance minister.
So my one question, and which is often asked, and that is not only UK, but we are seeing a major demographic shift in Europe, and it is really taking over not just the demography, but also democracy. So it is actually starting to have effect on politics, and they are getting seats, they are influencing the seats. So please analyze that particular angle as to how changing demographic is really changing the outcome of any elections.
Yeah, I do have a lot to say about this. So, I even many British people who are right of the center, they actually blame Tony Blair, who became prime minister in 1997, as I mentioned. That also was after 18, yeah, no, yeah, 18 years of conservative government. The Margaret Thatcher era, of 15, 13 years or something like that. But the point is that when Tony Blair came to power, the migrations were very few, very few, like some 100,000 in a year. It became million in a year, something like that. They see the shift was completely disproportionate. The capacity of British state or UK's state to actually accommodate these refugees or immigrants or migrants was completely overwhelmed. So uh, there was people were not rich, but they're not completely impoverished. You understand the difference? But you saw that after 1997 more and more because more and more poor people actually started coming in Britain. So migration increased, and in 20 after 2013 it just boomed because after the Syrian refugee crisis and all, ISIS and etc., more and more Middle Eastern men started coming in Europe and Britain. And I'm specifically talking about Middle Eastern men because these were, I mean, these were refugees who could actually cross Mediterranean Sea, and almost all of them, not all of them, but almost all of them were 15 or 14 to 45-year-old men because they had the physical power and strength to actually do that because it's horribly tough job to do on a normal boat, not on a ship. So many 14 to 45-year-old men crossed from Middle East and Northern Africa and some even from Pakistan, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, those countries as well to Europe. What that led to is you understand this entire region, the countries I mentioned, the region I mentioned, are almost all are Islamic countries or Muslim majority countries. So the Muslim population in Europe increased dramatically. It increased so dramatically that there were actually communal tensions in Birmingham, in um, many more cities of northern England. to be precise. Now there are no communal tensions because Muslims are so much powerful in numbers that there is no scope for communal tension. There was this survey when actually the British and the UK's right got very much powerful that the most common name in Britain in 2010 or 12 became Muhammad. So that was a cultural shock for the British right wing, and there was a reason for that. You know, the cultural differences were huge, are huge, and what people saw, people realized that an Indian going, to be precise, a Hindu or a Sikh going from India to any other country to Europe, and especially now that we are talking about UK and Britain, in UK, the assimilation process of these immigrants is smooth. They will act like they are even more British than the British themselves. But the process of assimilation did not take place in case of Middle Eastern men. First of all, they had very little to lose because when Hindus and Sikhs shifted to UK, they shifted with their families. In most cases, obviously, they shifted with their families. So they had to take care of their families. They had to look after their families. Here, that was no concern for them because they're almost all men. I'm talking about after 2013. But even without the families, the assimilation process was not happening. You can see that even in India, the ghettoization of the Muslim community is so much that even in Mumbai, you have regions like Kurla, Bandra, there's the small region of Malwani, Malad. All these regions, you can see that the assimilation process, which is crucial, especially if you are going in a completely foreign country, that needs to happen. You can see an Indian, a Hindu to be precise, or a Sikh for that matter, can assimilate and be a British person anywhere in Britain or UK. You cannot find that, not that you cannot find, but it is extremely difficult to find that for a Muslim refugee, especially if the Muslim refugee is coming after 1997. Now, here is the worst part and most shocking part. The survey, there were many surveys. The survey suggested that people who, even now we are talking about, now specifically talking about Muslim immigration. Those Muslims who immigrated to UK in the 50s, 60s, 70s, that is after colonization and everything, they were assimilated much more easier and much more quicker and much more fully. But their children and children's children were not. So the second and third generation immigrants were less assimilated than the first generation. And this was a unique phenomenon, which is why you could see many British ISIS fighters in Iraq and Syria when ISIS was at its peak. We read all of that in papers and TV channels. So the assimilation, which was supposed to rise, actually decreased when generation after generation. Now you're at a stage where the third generation of that generation, the 50s and 60s generation, is young, of our age or slightly older, and you have this new wave of refugees coming from all these Islamic countries or Muslim majority countries to be precise after 2013. So the demographic problem is not much in numbers. Now, let me be very clear. There is still 70 to 80% white population, English speaking population. Almost entire world speaks English now, but English speaking population, white population is there in Britain. But the cultural clashes have started happening. People, people don't see the Britain that was in 30 years ago, 40 years ago. The neighborhoods have changed. The country have changed. And they don't like it. The point is that we did not vote for this. Nobody asked us for this. Nobody took our permission to actually bring in so many refugees who are so difficult to assimilate culturally. You'll never find this much of an uh, I would I would go on and say anger against a foreign community in Britain except Muslim community. Now it is easier to call it Islamophobia because it is only against Islamic community. But the thing is that all the other communities, Hindus, Sikhs, Polish immigrants, East European immigrants, Jamaicans, West Indians, they have all assimilated very quickly and very smoothly and fully. That process is not happening exclusively in Muslim community. So the problem does not lie in British ethos because all the rest of the communities have assimilated. The problem lies in the Islam that it actually restricts people from assimilating in different cultures. And why that happens is a completely different topic. But I will give you just one example that when and it's not UK specific, but it's the migration problem is not just UK specific. The immigration problem is Europe. It is all over Europe. Even I would say more than UK, it is chronic in Germany. So Turkey's president that almost all Indians know now, he actually he actually went to Germany. He addressed Turkish community, and he said, "You flourish, you do whatever you have to do, but do not assimilate. Keep your identity. You are Turkish." He did not use the word Muslims. He said, "You are Turkish." Everybody understood what that is. He said, "You are Turkish, and you have to remain Turkish. You cannot become a German." So, if a head of a state can say that out loud publicly, you can imagine what the religious leaders and the community leaders are actually saying. And we all know what is the standard of literacy, standard of education is among these communities, all of our communities, not just Muslim communities, similar in Hindu community, more or less. So whatever their leader says, what the tribal leader says in their community, in that area, they agree. Since they agree, they're easy to manipulate. Since they're easy to manipulate, we are seeing the tensions rising and rising and rising.
Right. So all these things are there, and yeah, one very important thing which I would like to ask is why suddenly we see at least two what we can say is Indo-Britain faces, and to be even more precise, Hindu Britain faces, which is leading and this particular cabinet and holding important posts. What is this shift? Because generally, I have read that the Indian community, Hindu community in Britain, used to vote for Labour for a lot of time. What has basically caused this shift towards conservative? What is the idea behind?
Right. Uh, so yeah, you're perfectly right in saying that uh, Indians and to be even more specific, Hindus used to vote for Labour in an overwhelming majority. Overwhelming majority. Because as I said, conservatives were supposed to be the aristocratic, rich, upper middle class, white people's party.
Right,
So those who would not be fit into that bracket would vote for Labour.
right,
Since that was the case, even Hindus would vote for Labour. And that was the case till 2005, 2010 even. But it started changing slowly after 2015 and it changed drastically in 2019, the election that happened 2 years ago. The reason is, and there is sufficient data available to check it, that now more Hindus vote for conservative than they vote for Labour. Hindu community in England today, sorry, as of 2019, actually holds sway on 18 to 20 or something like that seats. So they can shift the winner. They can choose the winner. So it is important to recognize the political and electoral heft of Hindu community in Britain, in England to be specific. Now, because of this shift from Labour to Conservative, and in order to consolidate even more, Conservative Party has appointed these two bright young Hindu faces in their cabinet committee on securities, for that matter, finance and home. And even just to digress a little, if you realize, one is a Gujarati, one is a Punjabi. So two communities who migrate most in numbers from India to UK have been given representation. So that is the reason why these two are. I'm not. I'm not suggesting that they are not capable or they are being given this post just because they are Hindus. That's not the case. I'm saying that there are many more, even in Labour Party and in Conservative Party. But since now Conservative Party wants to consolidate, they are giving importance to these two.
Right. So now I think in there are around 3 to 5 minutes. So we are towards the conclusion of this particular episode. So considering this entire picture and now speaking about the big picture, and my question would be, what would be your kind of predictions or analysis for the coming decade, that is starting from 2020 till 2029, or even you can consider 30? So what we can expect from British polity, UK's polity for this decade? Will it go more conservative or Labour will bounce back? Your prediction.
Very difficult to say. Firstly, because in 2011, as I said, Conservatives did not even have their own majority. That was after 13 years of Labour government. So people thought that it was a fluke because the Liberal Democrat, the another party in 2010, which got 63 or some seats, 63 or 68 something seats in 60s basically, to actually supported David Cameron, and they had their own deputy prime minister as well. So it was quite unimaginable to actually believe that conservatives would get a majority on their own. But they did in 2015, which was very surprising. In 2017, I beg your pardon, Theresa May actually lost that majority. She thought she would win even bigger majority because of Brexit, but she actually lost many seats. In 2019, however, the majority was increased because of the leadership of Boris Johnson. Now, Boris Johnson is relatively very young, even though he had very close battle with death during COVID-19 last year. But he survived, and he seems to be not in, if not in very peak condition, then livable condition. If Joe Biden can be president of US, Boris Johnson can certainly be British Prime Minister. So if he continues to be Prime Minister, and if Keir Starmer or leaders like him continue to be opposition leaders of the Labour leaders, then right now it is safe to say that the Conservative Party will gain even more, because even in 2019 there were many seats which voted to leave during a Brexit referendum and yet voted with Labour. Now, Labour has gone so far to the left and so far with the Remain faction, even though that's not even an option now, that the Northern England working class population is actually seeing Conservative Party as their own party, and that's a huge. It's like BJP actually winning a state like Kerala, or Tamil Nadu, or Andhra Pradesh. It would be so catastrophic and watershed moment in Indian election. That's the same thing which happened in 2019 in Britain. A similar thing.
Right. So on that note, we would conclude anything which you would like to say, as as you conclude the entire analysis on Britain. What would you basically highlight that this is something you should watch for in UK's politics?
Yeah. So I would like to talk about this one particular issue, that is left Islamic alliance. You can see that in India, obviously. You can see that in UK and you can see that in US. Basically, the Anglosphere countries plus India. If you consider India as Anglosphere country, then okay. But if not, then plus. That is happening because left has realized that the revolution which was supposed to come from the working class population is not coming. So the revolution which can only come based on ethnic or religious lines. In
Right.
India's case, caste lines as well, because you can't really have a revolution on ethnic lines in India. So the caste is a factor, but religion is a common factor. In that case, Islam as a religion is a totalitarian religion. Either you believe in my God or I kill you. Left is a totalitarian ideology. Either you believe in my ideology, you give me all of your wealth, or I either kill you or you leave this country. So that's a perfect marriage of these two totalitarian ideologies. I'm
Right.
actually quite surprised that it took them so long to actually get married, but finally they have. They realize that we are made for each other, and they did get married. And it's a common thing. Just last point, in India, when after 2014, Congress party has actually gone more to the left than it ever was.
Right.
Similarly, Democratic Party has gone more to the left than it ever was, and the Labour Party has gone more to the left than it ever was. In all these cases, they want, especially Muslims, immigrants, to come in India, get the citizenship, and vote for them. If they do that, in US's case, I would agree that there is Mexican Latin factor as well, but the Islamic factor is also there. You remember when Trump actually, when he became president, he actually banned people from Islamic countries to enter US.
Yeah. Yeah.
All Democrats, all Democrats resisted and protested against that move because that is their pushback. Each move against Israel by the Palestinians is supported. Even LGBTQ rallies, they support Palestine, which has nothing to do with LGBTQ. They actually stone them to death if you are gay, but it doesn't matter because the ideology, the left ideology, and the Islam tops everything, even logic. So that's the perfect marriage that they have.
Right. In fact, I would just conclude on this note that many a times it is often seen that there is a clear-cut alliance between the communist forces and Islamist forces. And the irony of that is when the Islamist forces gain power, the history says that the first they go out to witch hunt are communists. So on that note, I hope that the
The exception is USSR. That when communists got to power, they
they did
eradicated
not
all the
really go
Muslims.
after. They
You,
yeah
you
they
can
did.
see the same thing in China right now. When the communists are in
Yeah,
power
of
in
course,
Xinjiang,
of
you,
course.
you don't find Islam because two totalitarian regimes can't exist at the same time.
Cannot yeah. Two truths
Only
cannot
one can.
exist. Yeah. So other truth has to be drowned.
Yeah.
So yeah. So on that note, this has been a really great discussion, quite amusing also because there have been a very sudden certain changes in UK's polity, and we definitely will continue to watch this space. Thanks a lot, Apurva, for joining today and sharing
Thank
your views.
you.
Thanks a lot. See you again.
Thank you.